For more analysis of President Jacob Zuma's State of the Nation address, we are joined in the studio by John Loos, who is household and property sector strategist at First National Bank. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Colin.
Well, let me just put you in the corner there. If you were President Jacob Zuma yesterday, after all the incident, chaotic incident there, what is it that you would have said that was expected by many people across the country?
I think what I'd have wanted to see is he did spend a lot of time on Eskom. That is a crucial sector, which is it's a constraint in our economy at the moment. And there's a 23 billion, if you could call it a bailout, going Eskom's way. But I think we do need far more earth-shattering announcements. I believe that the industry structure is part of the constraint. You've got a monopolistic situation, a protected monopoly to a large extent, and that's a very risky situation to be in. You know, when you've got a more competitive environment with players that are sort of an equal size and more of them, and there are such models in electricity, there's lower concentration risk. If one struggles, the others can pick up the slack. Right now, we've got a very risky situation where one group or one entity controls the bulk of the electricity sector, and I think it's got to be restructured. So I didn't expect to see anything on that note, but I think that's what would be needed, is some earth-shattering announcements on the change of industry structure in electricity and a more competitive sector.
Do you feel that the president should have addressed the concerns of small business owners? Because given the recent attacks, xenophobic attacks in Soweto, where small businesses by immigrant entrepreneurs were looted, what should the message be rather to the country on that?
I think that's a tough one, Colin, how to go about addressing small business, and I think it goes back to, in a lot of industries, addressing the competition structure. And
he said small business is big business.
Small business ultimately becomes big business. It's the development part of your economy, and I think that, you know, the problem in South Africa is that there are a lot of industries dominated by big business. I mean, we've just talked about electricity. That's one of them, I guess, which is really dominated by a big one. So you know, competition policy needs a lot of attention in that respect to protect. I've read articles about the United States where they've said that since the end of the Reagan years, they haven't enforced competition legislation as aggressively there. And that's resulted in more people working for big corporations over time and less entrepreneurship. I think that's where, I don't think you could address it in the State of the Nation speech, but certainly competition policy in a lot of industries needs to be looked at to promote the interests of smaller and medium-sized businesses.
Well, not so much emphasis regarding jobs at the moment, which of course unemployment standing at 24.3% is still relatively high, with many people just getting temporary jobs, others are just seasonal workers. So how do you think that this issue should have been addressed? Because in the previous State of the Nation address last year, he promised people that there will be many jobs created by government.
Yeah, you know, government can only do so much in the short term. You know, where you really need to go with this is education and skills development, and get that sector right. Aggressively get it right. It's got major troubles. And then, of course, the other bottleneck, you know, I've mentioned electricity. That's one of the bottlenecks. We've got to push for an economy that's growing at 5%, 6%. And it's about addressing the big industries that are the bottlenecks in this economy of ours. Again, you know, every now and then we have little job creation initiatives and incentives and so on. They don't ultimately mean too much. Ultimately, it's about getting an economy growing at far higher levels. At the moment, we're a 2% growth economy at best, and that's not going to create many jobs.
Following the pandemonium in Parliament, exactly what happened yesterday got so many people raising their eyebrows as to what's happening to South Africa. What will the president say, and what will the repercussions be? We've seen not so much of a dramatic movement in the markets, the rand remaining not as volatile as we expect it to be. What do you think is the external impression of South Africa at the moment?
I think the concerns have been growing gradually over time. Not, you know, this is just one incident. What this incident reflects to me, I mean, already we've seen since about 2008 significantly heightened strike action. We've seen significantly heightened service delivery protests, and now we've seen significantly more combative sort of environment in Parliament too. And without getting into who's wrong or right, I think that this is just a reflection of the heightened tensions across the board in South Africa, which can be more disruptive as the time goes by to this economy. We've seen strikes last year, for instance, disrupting this economy quite dramatically. And I think that the reason why perhaps you don't see much market reaction just on this is a lot of it's already priced in, because we've had these heightened tensions. We've had a big depreciation in the rand over the past couple of years already. So the markets have priced in these heightened tensions for a couple of years now.
All right. So we should look forward to the budget speech by Minister Nhlanhla in the future to address some of the issues he left out.
Yes, and I'd like to see much more fixed investment there. Don't know if we will, but that's what I'd like to see, a bigger portion of the budget being put on capital formation, capital investment. We've got to be much more aggressive on that in future.
All right. Thank you very much for always being there when we need you, John.
It's a pleasure, Colin.
All right. I'm speaking to John Loos, who is a property and household strategist at FNB.